Okay, let's bring in Omar Ashour. He's a professor of security and military studies at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. Omar, thanks for joining us. So, of course, Israel has launched these two major assaults on the Al-Maghazi, Al-Bureij refugee camps, knowing full well how densely packed these areas are with civilians, and we all know the consequences of what happens when these areas are targeted. Nevertheless, Israel's pushing ahead with its operation, whatever it means.
So you're absolutely right. They are very dense area. We're talking now about areas that they're not as dense as Rafah, but they are still very dense, over 10,000 person per square kilometer. These are the estimates now because of they're changing because of the movement. But also they are operating there with the 7th Armored Brigade. So we're talking here not about fighting with light weapons and light infantry, but with tanks. So the 7th Armored entered the Bureij camp, and this is a reinforced brigade, so it's not a 3-battalion brigade. It's now about 5 battalions are involved in it. 2 of them are paratroopers, and the rest are armored and mechanized. So we're seeing heavy metal rolling in these very densely populated areas. But at the same time, these areas were cleared multiple times before, and the Israeli army multiple times said that they cleared the Bureij. Apparently, one of 2 things: either the strategy is not functioning, so it is not working. They did not cut the lines of communications between the Hamas and other military formations, and therefore these areas, after they leave, they come back, or they have bad intelligence on what's going on there. Or they are attempting to create some, like we saw in Netzarim and in Rafah, strong points, sort of a reoccupation of particular parts, and staying there to create strong points and do these raids every now and then.
That was going to be my next question. It's one thing to launch full assaults on these refugee camps. It is another thing to hold these positions.
So they are holding now at least along the Gaza strips at least 3 or 4 actually areas. So they are holding the buffer zone. They are holding the Netzarim corridor, which divides Gaza into north and south. This is the Karmeli, the 2nd brigade, the reserve brigades basically holding this line. And then they're holding what I'm seeing from Rafah along the Philadelphia corridor between Rafah and Sinai. They are creating new strong points. So based on the images, they are creating at least 2 of them, and they are manned by some of the brigades available. They have about 6 brigades now in Rafah. So that's a...
When you say a brigade, how many troopers are we talking about?
That's an issue now, because a NATO brigade would be between 3,000 to 5,000 men. But because they have a crisis in manpower and in terms of mobilizing of the reserves and so on, their brigades seem to be sometimes less than that, because they're not full-strength brigades, so not all the battalions there. So we're talking anywhere between 1,000 to 3,000, sometimes more, sometimes less. The 7th Armored now, it's a reinforced brigade, so they have like 5 battalions within it. So the range, very simply, we can put it between roughly 1,500 to all the way to 5,000, depends on are they at full strength, all the battalions are there fully manned or not.
Let me ask you about the timing of all of this, because the backdrop, of course, is all of this ambiguity about whether there is a proposal that will be signed up to or whether it will be rejected. Is the Israeli army right now using this ambiguity to complete some sort of strategic option here, or proposal on the ground? I
don't think there's a strategic option. The Prime Minister Netanyahu made it very clear that he's not interested in a permanent ceasefire, and therefore, why would they give the captives in terms of Hamas? But what we're seeing is holding specific territory, like the Netzarim corridor, like the strong points they are doing along the Salah ad-Din road, which divides the Gaza Strip into east and west as well. So holding these strong points to disrupt the mobility in Gaza, including the mobility of the civilians. And from there, they create like a sort of bases or camps or staging areas to attack based on intelligence. So if they see a movement or a unit is getting reconstituted from the Hamas side, they would launch airstrikes, artillery strikes, and sometimes raid with brigade-level operations. So this is not a strategy. This is just an operational plan, regardless of the humanitarian costs, because now we're seeing actually the humanitarian costs, the civilian losses in Rafah, since the Rafah operation has doubled. has doubled compared to previous months. So which tells you that all these operations in this very dense areas just kill a lot of civilians without achieving the objectives, even that of the current government.
And of course, in the meantime, it's civilians that are hemmed in, bearing the consequences of this continued violence. Omar Ashour, many thanks.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.